Although I do not want this, I'm still unable to let go. Please give me some advice to help get over it. Okay, there's two types of past hurts, what you've done to others and what others have done to you. And sometimes the first thing is to realize that they deserve to be forgiven for what they did to you. And you deserve to be forgiven for what you did to them as well. And to be able to do that, if you're going to forgive somebody else for what they've done to you, you have to first of all find some reason for forgiving them, some quality in them which deserves your forgiveness. So one simple way of doing that, which I wrote in the latest book, Don't Worry, Be Grumpy, otherwise known as Good, Bad, Who Knows, is get the piece of paper, write a line down the middle, put your enemy's name on top, and on the left-hand side, all the reasons why they're your enemy, all the terrible things, all the hurt they've done to you. So write it down. And number 2, on the right-hand side of the line, write all the wonderful and admirable qualities in that person who's hurt you, all the good things they've done. And write that down on the right-hand side until it's as many bad qualities as on the left-hand side of the line. You write the same number of good qualities on the right-hand side of the line. And then you get the pair of scissors and cut it down the middle. And the left-hand side with all the qualities, why they're a bad person, all the bad things they've done to you, the reason why, they've hurt you. Cut that off, throw it in the bin. And the right-hand side, all the good qualities in the person who's hurt you. Post it by your bedside. Put it in your office. Look at it. Put it on the screensaver of your computer. So as soon as you turn it on, you see the good qualities in your enemy. And what happens next is that you realize they're not such a bad person. Yeah, they've done bad things. You're not denying that. But they're not such a bad person. And once you realize that, they deserve to be forgiven. And you go back now to the famous simile of the 2 bad bricks in the wall. When I could only see 2 bad bricks, I wanted to destroy the wall. I couldn't let it go. But once I could see the 998 good bricks, the other part of the wall, then I could forgive the wall. I could let it go. So all you need to do is, now, whatever someone has done to you, see their good qualities. That's the most difficult part of it. Once you can see those good qualities, then they deserve forgiveness. The rest is pretty easy. Now, your bad qualities, all the terrible things that you have done, you can do the same with a piece of paper and a line down the middle. Or if that doesn't work, one of my favorite similes, I reticent giving this simile in Jhana Grove because it does block the toilets afterwards, which is a simile of writing down all the bad things you have done, which you can't let go of, all of your mistakes, all the mean, nasty, cruel, rotten things which you have done. And don't write it down on an ordinary piece of paper. Write it down in brown ink on toilet paper. And if you write down all the bad things you've done in the past on toilet paper in brown ink, psychologically you are making an association with the other brown stuff which goes on toilet paper. And once you've made that association, straight away you know that you do not keep toilet paper with even the slightest bit of brown muck on it. Even here, you may be a member of Greenpeace, Save the Earth, the World Wildlife Fund, but even the head of Green Sea Shepherd does not reuse the toilet paper. He doesn't use both sides of it, so I'm told. So you only use one side of it and only part of that side. So as soon as you've got some brown stuff on the toilet paper, what do you do with it? You do the letting go ceremony. So you write down all the bad things you have done on a piece of toilet paper, brown ink, read it to yourself, to remind yourself, you've done bad stuff. But it's brown on toilet paper. It's not something you should keep. So you take it to the ceremonial letting go room, known as the loo. You take it into the toilet, and you read it once more, or when you're in the toilet, all the bad things you've done, toilet paper, brown ink, and then you put it to the only place where it belongs, in the bowl. And you put it in the bowl, and then you can do some chanting if you want to, the letting go chanting. But then you do this wonderful ceremony as you press the button. And an amazing thing happens once you press the button. All this water comes out and it swivels around, swish, 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 and it goes down the hole and it's gone forever. And you can't get it back again. And with the piece of paper, with the brown ink and all the bad things you've done, that goes into the toilet where it belongs. All that bad, cruel stuff in the past, that's where it belongs, in the toilet. And if people do that ceremony, because they're not just saying, let go, just saying it is not good enough. You need to do a ceremony. You need to do some physical stuff as long with the mental stuff. It reinforces it. And that means that once you write it down on toilet paper in brown ink, do the ceremony properly in the toilet bowl, press the button, when it goes, it really helps for you to let go of the past as well. It's not worth keeping. It is, please excuse me, it's shitty stuff. All the hurt of the past. Why do you keep it in your pocket? Just like a piece of toilet paper which has always been used. So once you do that and do a little ceremony, it's actually easy to do. Then you can let go. But unfortunately, the poor old Mike and Daniel have to be calling the plumber next week to unblock all these toilets because there's a lot of stuff you have to write on that toilet paper. Does seeing non-self necessarily lead to stream entry? Yeah, it does. So once you really see non-self, really see non-self, then you become a stream winner. Ooh, exciting, isn't it? So how come we're not a stream winner yet? You haven't seen non-self. You've seen some of it, but not all of it. There's some little part which you're still hanging on to. And that last little part stops you becoming enlightened. We always like what I call the ultimate retirement home. So yeah, we want to become enlightened, but we want to be there to enjoy it when it happens. This really sucks, isn't it? You work all this hard to become enlightened, and once you become enlightened, that's it, you're gone, you can't enjoy it anymore. Oh. This is it, there's no one there. When you say there's no one there, life is much easier when there's no one there. Wow, this is not a question, an essay. Here we go. I live in a different country with my father. My relation with him is not close. So I understand from that, father lives in one country, you live in another country. Because since I was 12 years old, he had another woman and some to visit me. Ooh. Is it what happens when you have a mistress or like a toy boy, whatever you call it, if you're the opposite gender? It really creates too much trouble. And I can't understand why people do this. You know, one husband's enough. One wife is enough trouble. What do you want a mistress for as well? Cheapers. That's just one of the reasons why. To stop this at the root, I tell young men and young women, women, never marry a rich man. If your husband is rich, he can afford a mistress. If he's poor, there's no way he can afford a mistress. Look, mistress, they don't go with these men, married men, because he's beautiful or he's good in bed. They go with him because he's rich. No money, no honey, as they say. That's the only thing a mistress wants. So if your husband is poor, like Jana, you're not married yet. If you marry a rich guy, you're in trouble. Marry a poor guy, he will never be able to afford a mistress. You can go overseas on a retreat and you know that sort of your husband's okay because he can't afford anybody else. So you're safe. So girls marry poor guys. And guys marry ugly girls. If you marry a pretty one, other boys will go after her. But if she's ugly, no one else will ever want her. You can go playing golf for the week, and you know that no one wants your wife, so she's there for you when you come home. So it's obvious secret of a happy marriage. I don't know why other people do this, but you stupid guys always go for the beautiful girls, and you girls go for the rich guys. Stupid. That's why you have trouble like this. And sometimes as a girl, it's very hard to get beautiful. It costs a lot of money. But you should start new business, ugly parlours. It doesn't cost that much to make a girl ugly. And if you've got a rich guy, I can fix that. Send him here. Get a nice big donation for the monastery, and then he's poor, and then you can marry him, you'll be happy then. It's amazing what sacrifices I'll do to make you happy. Anyway, there we go. Since he was 12 years of age, so he had a mistress, and seldom came to visit you. Many times he came only for his business. Recently, he often came to my country for his business or for medical checkup. The problem is he wants to stay with me. I tried to stay with him twice, but even only 3 days, I felt very uncomfortable. Last month, I lied to him if my husband's family are a bit jealous if he stay with us. I have to lie because every time he comes for a holiday with his second wife and their children, they stay 5-star hotel, but if he has problem or about business, he stays with me. I just don't want the disturbing life. Did I do the right thing? Can I lie for my own peace? Because after that I feel guilty and affect my meditation. If you can afford a 5-star hotel, you can charge him for coming to stay with you. Why not get a bit of... But no, it's sometimes to be honest with your father, to say, look, it's very uncomfortable staying with you because what you did to my mum, you had another woman. And sometimes you can be honest with your feelings to him. And he may get sort of upset and shout at you, but say, well, look, this is what you did to me as a 12-year-old. And, he's still my father, but sort of, I'll come and visit you, but you can't stay in my home. You've lost that privilege. Sometimes people need to know the karmic results of their bad actions and their infidelity. So that's something you can do. And that's much better than sort of lying, because sooner or later he'll understand that, that your husband is okay with him staying there. And you'll find that out and you get in even bigger trouble. So I just write him a letter like you've written to me here and just tell him just the honest truth. You left my mother and you went off with your wife. You left me when I was 12. So I don't feel that responsibility to look after you back. Be honest with him. Dear Ajahn, do blessings for monks, nuns have real impacts, e.g. materialistic karma or just psychological comforts? How does that blessings work? Thank you. It does have immense. This is why I have to be very careful with my blessings. I was once one of the disciples here, and he's a very good man. He's a Malaysian fellow from Malacca, and he invited me to bless his friend's shop. His friend was just starting a new business. Can I come to bless his shop? And I always say yes, unless there's a good reason for saying no. My problem is I'm sometimes really busy. I don't really ask what type of shop it is. And when I got there, I found what it was lottery shop. That's all they do, sell lottery tickets, nothing else. And it was too late by that time. And I had the holy water, the swish, all the paraphernalia. And so I did the full blessing for this guy. And I thought, well, make him happy, that's it. And about a month or 2 months later, over in our city centre in Nonamara, I was reading the Saturday paper, and there was a huge article in the paper, the luckiest lottery shop in the whole of Australia. And that was the one that I blessed. It works. But I've got to be very careful. And so many of you have been asking me, where is it? Where is it? I want to go there. Where is it? No way, I'm not telling you. And some of the other stuff which has happened when I do the blessings. I remember going to this, there was a Chinese couple, their father was dying. So I went to see him in Royal Perth Hospital, to sort of give him some chanting. They said, can you please come and chant for my dad? So I went in there, and I really put effort into whatever I do in my life. The other monks will say this. If I give a talk, I really give it everything I've got. chanting sadhus, everything I've got. I do work, everything I've got. Whatever I do, even writing books, I really give it 100%. So chanting, I do the same. I give it 100%. So a couple of days later, the family rang me and said he's recovered. And they were really upset. So we didn't want him to recover. We wanted him to have a peaceful death. And now you've put us back to square one again, Ajahn Brahm. We're not happy with you at all. They'd prepared everything. The doctor said he was going to die. There's no possibility of cure. And so they reconciled themselves to their father going, and they arranged everything, even arranged a funeral service. And this monk comes along and he recovers. They were very upset. And the other times, I have been banned from 2 Thai restaurants in Perth from doing any chanting there. And the reason was because I went there and I chanted, and the next day they would just run off their feet. There's too many customers came after the chanting, and they got stressed out. Said, we don't want you ever again, it's too much stress. We want an easy life. We wanted a few more customers, but not that many. My chanting was too strong. So they won't let me go there anymore. The chanting is too powerful. So yeah, sometimes the chanting does work. How it works, can you know? Sometimes it's the power of the mind, and sometimes as a person they just get a more confidence. But it can only work in certain areas, because I've been saying I go over for lunch over to the monastery, because there's lots of people come, and I travel around so much they hardly ever see me, so I thought it's a great opportunity to spend lunch times over there. And I've been telling people that now is the time of year you get many young people come to the temple. And sometimes people think that young people don't go to temples. They do go to temples, but usually just this time of the year, because it's exam time and they need some divine intervention. So they come for chanting and holy water, because either they're about to do their exams or they've done them and they're worried sick because they didn't do so well. And I like the story of this Malaysian girl. She was doing, I think, a year, first or second year at university, and she came for some chanting, and I never saw her again. But her friends came up and said, remember that girl who got some chanting for you from last week? She's going around telling everybody, all her friends, the monks in Nolamara temple are no good. Because she failed her exams. And she blamed me. Not my fault. You haven't been doing any study at all. There's only so much, chanting can do. If you haven't done any work, it's not going to give you the straight A's in the exam. So she was asking for too much. But it does have some power. Yeah, but the best power, of course, is getting rid of ghosts. Now, that is incredibly powerful chanting. And sometimes, how does it work? How do you monks, and even the nuns, how is your chanting the best? Because it's absolutely true. If it was in Malaysia or here in Australia, if there's a ghost, a haunting or something, you get the Christians, please excuse me, but their chanting doesn't work. Their exorcisms, no way. They get Muslims, indigenous people, Jews. Eventually they get the Buddhists. And we are absolutely, ask everybody else, the best Ghostbusters. And you know why it works? Because if you listen to our chanting, it's so bad. No self-respecting ghost can stand it. And they run away screaming, not those Buddhist monks. I think that's the reason why, because our chanting is maybe not that sonorous. It's interesting with the chanting, I told the monks this, when you're here doing the chanting, you can just hear yourself, and it doesn't sound as good as if you're just standing outside a little bit. It sounds beautiful. Because, some years ago we had the monks from New Norcia, the Benedictine monks, and their chanting, and that goes on records, and it's beautiful chanting to hear, the old Gregorian chanting. And so they came once, and we asked them, you can do some chanting for us. It was gorgeous. Then they asked us, can you do some chanting? And said, you don't want to hear this, do you? I said, yes, we do. And then we chanted, and they said, wow, that's beautiful. And I thought they were just being kind, but they said, no, we're monks, we can't lie either. And it was beautiful. So it's quite a compliment. that when you just stand a little bit out of the chanting, all the different tones actually melt together, and it becomes quite beautiful. Anyway, enough about chanting. It's so good to be happy. Something when there's so much it's so good to be happy. Something when there's so much suffering and cruelty in the world. Factory farming of animals, slavery, treatment of asylum seekers, war, to name just 4. Wouldn't it be better to be sad or angry so that we are energized to try to stop these awful things? Not really. That means one more bit of suffering. So this is a strange thing. If you are angry when other people are angry, if you are suffering when other people are suffering, you can't really help anybody. It's one of the things which the Buddha said. A person in the mud can't pull someone else out of the mud. They've got to be standing on the dike of the paddy field or standing on something strong and solid. Then you can help other people. A person who's suffering can't help another person suffering. They just make it worse. Someone who's happy and strong and energized, then you can help others. So don't feel guilty about being happy if other people are being sad. You can sometimes bring them out of that sadness if you're happy. You're on sort of dry land and then you can pull them out. Dear Ajahn, can meditation cause energy to rise up the spine, like the yogis talk about Kundalini energy rising up the spine? If so, what does this mean? Thanks. Yes, it can, but it's not advised, because that type of energy, especially when you get into nice deep meditation, that is energy which doesn't belong in the body, it belongs in the mind. And when it's in the wrong place, it can sort of give you very uncomfortable, unbalanced energies in the body. They don't have good effects afterwards. And I've known many people who have done that, and they've felt they can't sleep at night, and they feel very unbalanced, very uncomfortable in their body, because it's energy which doesn't belong there. Which is one of the reasons why in this meditation, if you follow the instructions, you let go of the body as soon as possible, so your body disappears. You can't feel the body, so the energy can't go into it. It just stays in the mind, and the mind becomes very bright and happy and blissful, and the energy is in its right place. So if it allows it to leak into the body, because you're still aware of the body, you haven't let it go yet, it's because you're attached to the body, you can't really let it go properly. And then that energy which belongs in the mind goes into the body and just messes you up. And it's not advisable at all. I call it a leaky bucket. Water should be in the bucket, and the leak in the bucket goes all the carpet over the floor and makes a big mess. So energy which doesn't belong in the body. Dear Ajahn, you spoke about the importance of physical comfort for your monks to have a good meditation practice, unlike your experience in the jungles of Thailand. What is your thought on allowing your monks to eat a healthy meal in the evening? Wouldn't this contribute to the physical and mental health of the monks? Should modern dietary information take precedence over the traditions such as eating only twice a day? Thanks. Because one of the monks wrote this. The nuns. They are hungry. Look, this is what happens when I eat 2 meals a day. What would happen if I ate 3? But the whole idea of 3 meals a day, or actually, let's be honest, 4 meals, 5 meals, 6 meals a day. Every year we have what's called the Executive Retreat for the Buddhist Fellowship in Singapore. And the last one was held in Penang. Were any of you there for that one? Executive Retreat in Penang last year? No, you weren't in that one. And, we allowed them to, not me, but everyone else was allowed to have a meal in the evening. So 5 precepts for the first few days. And I thought, that's okay, until I saw it wasn't just a meal in the evening. They had breakfast, and then had mid-morning tea. And it wasn't just tea. It was spring rolls, there was noodles, and goodness knows what else. And then they had their big lunch, and my lunch was the last of the day. They ate twice as much as I did. And then they had afternoon tea, which was more, curries and stuff. And then they had their dinner, and then we had the evening meditation. And after the evening meditation and talk, questions and answers, about 9 o'clock, they went out for supper. And I couldn't believe It wasn't just 1 meal or 2 meals, about 7 meals a day. So, you don't need that much food to be happy. And in fact, if you look at history, I remember reading a history book once about eating. Even like 3 meals a day is a very modern adaptation. It's not natural to the human being to eat so much food in one day. So about maybe 50 years ago, just usual people working in the fields, the natural human being would eat twice a day. They'd eat their breakfast and their dinner in the evening when they came back. And before that, maybe 150 years ago, it was only just 1 meal a day in the evening. They wouldn't have anything for breakfast. They'd go out into the fields and in the evening have a big meal in the evening, and that would be all they'd eat all day. Just a 1 meal a day. And they're very healthy on that. And if you go back even earlier, into the Stone Age times, that people would eat a meal only once every 3 or 4 days whenever they caught a dinosaur or a woolly mammoth or something, and then they'd have a big feast and that would do them for a few days. The human body is well built for actually storing food. So you don't need to eat in the evening, and it's quite healthy not to. So that's why it's very nice to be comfortable, but this is comfortable. And the nice thing about having nothing to eat in the evening time is you've got all this time to meditate. First couple of days you may feel hungry, but it's amazing, just after a few days you don't even think about food in the evening because you don't see it and you don't think about it, and your body is nice and light afterwards. So you get some great meditations in the evening, simply because your body's not digesting food anymore. It's taking a rest, which is good for you. So anyway, that's why we do it this way. I read the book regarding the urine which the Buddha suggested to drink his own urine as a medicine. Do you follow his suggestion? Any comment about this issue? Thank you. What are you laughing at? I think honestly, for 4 years I drank my own urine. I did it in Thailand. But when I came here to Australia, in the summertime, we were working so hard the first year that when I went to drink my urine, there was nothing there. It was like concentrate, and it wasn't really that nice to drink. But you get used to it after a while. In the morning, you get up early in the morning, and just the first one you just let out, and then you put your cup underneath. It's a nice warm drink in the morning. And there's nothing gross about it. It comes out of you, goes back into you. And someone else's urine, that might be a bit more of a challenge. But your own is, what's the big deal about it? I did that for 4 years. And apparently that was the Desai, the Indian Prime Minister. Yeah, he did that. Yeah. Maharaji Desai, he did that for a while. So, yeah, it's easy to do. It's not gross. So give it a try, just to see what's wrong with it. It's just ordinary stuff. It's just the idea which people have about it. Oh, drinking my own urine, I can't do that. Why not? So yeah, I've done that before. But it's interesting what Ajahn Chah said, because a few of us were doing this, and we asked Ajahn Chah about this. He said it's okay until you stop. And no, he's an incredibly wise person. The body gets used to the urine, and it's supposed to be good for you. I know it's always really good, as an antiseptic. If you had a cut or anything, you just urinate on the cut, and it would clean it up, and it's a great antiseptic. But to drink it, says after a while, sort of, the body gets used to it, and if it stops, the body has to adapt again to not taking it. So that's a problem. Yeah, so it's not a bad thing at all. And one of the nice things about it, obviously, is it just, you're facing your likes and dislikes. It's just, remember in Thailand you used to eat frogs and snails and water buffalo after birth, or the placenta. I always say that's one food every vegetarian should be able to eat. Because, it's just waste product. When the buffalo or a cow gives birth, you've got the placenta, it's not harming it, it's not killing anything, it's just waste product. And it's actually quite full of nutrients. So even a vegetarian, because you're not harming any animal to eat that, so it should be a great source of protein for vegetarians. No? Why not? I remember this story I once told, and it's a lovely story, and it's apt here. Somebody, again, I get into trouble because I don't ask. They invited me to give a talk at a primary school, and I thought it'd be, 10 or 11-year-olds. But when they actually got me into the class, it was year 1s and year 2s. Grade 1s and grade 2s, and I had to teach Buddhism to grade 1s and grade 2s, 5 and 6-year-olds, and that, a whole heap of them. And that was really a challenge. But, I'm always up for challenges, just see what happens and see if you can do it. And I rose to the challenge, because there's about 60 or 70 of these really little kids, in this room, with the teachers and a few parents as well. And I said to them, put your hands up if you don't like rice pudding. Rice pudding is like a dish which some people can have. And then about 4 children put their hands up, they didn't like rice pudding. And all the other kids, they looked around and saw these 4 with their hands up, and a few other put their hands up as well. And then more kids saw that more children had their hands up, and in just 10 or 20 seconds, the whole 60 children had their hands up. They did not like rice pudding. It's okay, put your hands down, kids. And now put your hands up, the children who have ever eaten rice pudding. And about 6 children put their hands up. And all the rest of the children laughed. They got it straight away. They got out judgmental attitudes, judging something as being disgusting when you've never even eaten it. And I got the message across straight away because they all laughed when they saw what I was getting at. How many of you have drunk your own urine? You don't know what it tastes like. It's just in your mind. It's disgusting because of conditioning. That's the problem. So tonight, see who's the real tough guys and tough girls here. So anyway, it's easy. Just bung it in your mouth and drink it. It's nice and salty. It's got a exquisite taste to it. A bit. No, I'm not going into this. But you don't know, do you? Because you never tasted it, but straight away you assume it's disgusting. And that's the problem with people. We judge without really knowing what's going on.
Why did you do it in Thailand?
It's because it's supposed to be good for your health. We read this book about it. And it was also a little bit of a challenge to see if you could overcome your attachments and your likes and dislikes. And, the first time was a bit of a challenge. You see it there, you can smell it. Let's give it a try. And it's easy enough to do. It's not bad for your health, so it's quite good. Anyway, birds kill small insects, worms, etc. for food. They don't know they're doing something bad. Is it only volitional acts that are bad karma? Yeah, you have to have intention. To number one, know what you're doing, and just know that it's going to be harmful and hurting somebody else. So intention. So number one, you have to have, it can't be accident. If you just step on a snail or something because you're not looking where you're going, that's not bad karma because you didn't mean to do it. It was an accident. So now things with no intention at all are not karma at all. But if it's an intentional act, you deliberately do that, that has karmic consequences. And it depends whether it's out of kindness or out of ill will. If it's kindness, an intentional act coming from a nice place is good karma. Intentional act coming from a bad place is bad karma. So where it's going to is intention. If it's not going anywhere because it's an accident, you didn't mean to do anything, it's not karmic at all. But if you intend to do it and it's coming from a good place, that's good karma, bad place, bad karma. It's simple as that. So what about euthanasia? Is that good karma or bad karma? Where's it coming from? Why are you doing that? If it's not intentional, you kill somebody by accident, that's not karmic at all. It has to be intentional. Deliberately you're doing this for a purpose. And why are you doing it? Is it coming from compassion or is it coming from ill will? Is it coming from stupidity? So that's why it's very hard to judge these things. But you know, if it really is compassionate, then there can't be any bad karma from it. And then, just to stir people up, did the Buddha commit voluntary euthanasia? 3 months before he passed away, he was at the Chapala shrine and he deliberately gave up his will to live. Voluntarily, deliberately, he decided to die. That's voluntary euthanasia. So the Buddha committed suicide. Did he? No. Oh, you can't say that. Why not? It doesn't that sort of, what is suicide anyway? You do an act deliberately to cause your own death.
It was the last meal
The meal? Okay, you can say the 3 months before the last meal. Did the Buddha know what he was doing?
Yeah.
Was
He said not to give to the other monks.
Exactly. He knew it was going to kill him, not to give it to the other monks.
But he said only a Buddha can sustain that meal.
Yeah, but he was wrong then. He made a mistake because he couldn't sustain it. He said it was only fit for the Buddha, but the Buddha knew he was going to kill him. He deliberately ate poisonous food, knowing it was going to kill him. Suicide again.
But he didn't want to refuse.
He could refuse, he's a Buddha. So he didn't. Maybe he knew what he was doing. So maybe the Buddha committed voluntary euthanasia. Yeah, but I didn't realize they were going to kill me, and in fact they didn't. I'm not the Buddha. The Buddha was all wise. So, but was it with good intention or bad intention?
Venerable Ananda killed himself.
Yeah, he did it too. That was a wonderful story. The Venerable Ananda, he was just the monk after the time of the Buddha, the most famous monk after the time of the Buddha. And he was getting to 120, the end of his lifespan. And so he was being followed by these two countries because they both wanted his relics. Because relics are big bucks for the country. If you've got the relics of a holy monk somewhere, then all the tourists come there. The whole thing with relics, it got really over the top in Christianity afterwards, because even St. Francis, they were trying to bribe him, please die in our town. Really nice. He's getting old. No, don't die in somewhere else. We want you to die now. They weren't interested in keeping him alive. They wanted him to die in our town because then it would become a place of pilgrimage for people. And I think eventually they tricked him into going to one town. That's where he died. And all the people in the town were very happy. But the grossest of the relic stories in Christianity was there was a famous saint somewhere in Europe. It was died many years ago. And many people would go pilgrimage one day a year to this town. And of course, that was the time of the year, all the hotels, the inns, the eateries, the pubs as well. They made a fortune on the Saint's Day, the week before, the week afterwards. It was like having the Formula One Grand Prix or the World Cup cricket in your country. Huge influx of people, lots of money. And so this town was doing really well. And they had this guy, he was just a priest of this town called Norwich in England, which was a small village at that time. And he went on pilgrimage into Europe. And on this day of this Saint's Day, they would actually open up his coffin and people would kiss him. This dead man who'd been dead for 30, 40, 50 centuries, I don't know how long. And they'd kiss him for good luck. Kissing a corpse, you think drinking urine is gross. This is even worse. But this guy from Norwich, this priest, he went down to kiss, the saint, and he bit off the saint's nose, kept it in his mouth, and walked out of the cathedral, and that's the way he smuggled the nose of this saint out of Europe. He managed to get back to his hometown of Norwich, installed the relic, because they knew they'd lost the nose, he had it, installed a relic in the town of Norwich. He was promoted to be the bishop almost immediately, but by all of the burghers and all the innkeepers and restaurateurs of Norwich. And that's where Norwich became a cathedral and a city. And he became so famous in that city, really good for business. And that's how gross people would be to get a relic. They'd bite off the nose of someone just to get it, so it's really gross. But anyway, that's actually what happens with relics. And so Ananda, they were after his relics, and he knew there would be a fight over them because they were worth a lot of money. Intrinsically they're not, but the pilgrims which come there, the tooth relic in Kandy, how much dollars does that get into Kandy? Huge amount of money comes in there because of that. And so he got to the river dividing the two kingdoms. He levitated into the middle of the river, and the two kingdoms, just wondering, die on our side, die on the other side. And he rose up into the air, and he entered the fire element, and he spontaneously combusted. You've heard of spontaneous combustion, it's one of those psychic phenomena, but he did this on purpose. And his two ashes piles, absolutely equal, fell on either side of the river. So they both got an equal share of his relics. And everybody was happy. That's a very cool way to die. You don't need getting funeral parlour and going to sort of this crematorium to get burned, which costs a lot of money. I don't know how you'd actually get the certificates from the government if we did that over here. But anyway, that they managed to do it in those days. And it's a very cool way of dying, so that's what he did. Another suicide. Intentional to self-immolate.
There are several sutta where the monks take the knife.
Yeah. One of them, the Buddha said, his suicide will be blameless, said the Buddha.
And the Buddha was saying they were arhat.
Yeah. So sometimes it can be okay. Can it? Depends on the intention. But one of the fascinating stories that I really want to find this out, get some more detail, but I haven't got the ability to, because this is in ancient Greece, in Athens, in the Forum, there was a fellow from India called Samana Chagas. Samana means monk. And he immolated himself in the Forum and created a huge sensation. I've never seen anything like that before. And that's what they say, immolated himself. And I can't see how we could have made a funeral pyre and just jumped on real flames. To me it sounds exactly the same as what Dabbamalaputta and Ananda did, self-immolated, using psychic powers. And this was a Buddhist monk in Greek history who did that over in Athens. Really want to find out more about that. And made a sensation in the place. Anyway, here we go. So if anybody is getting to the end of their life and just wants to die in a really cool, awesome way, immolate, self-immolate. But wait for everyone here so we can see it. We can take selfies with you as you're self-immolating. That'd be really cool. A retreat to remember. Anyway, here we go. Let's go back into some real life again. Standard instruction for metta meditation is to send loving kindness starting from oneself to all other beings. However, the Metta Sutta does not make any specific reference to I or myself. It says, may all beings be happy. Does it mean that sending loving kindness to oneself is not important or relevant? May all beings be happy and well. All beings. Are you a being? Are you some alien who's outside of the species? It means you as well. All beings doesn't mean other beings. It means me as well. You're included in all. You're one of them. Welcome. So, sending all beings, but saying may all beings be happy and well. I've been arguing with that recently because that is really trying to control people. And the reason for this is that on one of these retreats some years ago, I was really pushing this. I want everyone to be happy. Just meditate and get blissed out, at least get strong mindfulness so the food tastes delicious. And there was one young lady here who got very upset. I think you all know, I told it's Veronica. He got so upset because he came to see me in the morning interviews, I don't feel like being happy, and all this trying to be happy business really upsets me. And she says, I don't feel happy, okay, and I refuse to be happy. And I want to be grumpy. And so I said, okay, you can be grumpy, but wait here a moment. And I went into the office and I printed out the first and original grumpy license on headed notepaper. I think it was BSWA, headed notepaper. And the license said, this license grants to the holder, Veronica, whatever her name was, permission to be grumpy for any reason or no reason particular, at any time for the rest of her life, signed Ajahn Brahm. So now she had permission to be grumpy, signed by her teacher. And as soon as I handed her the grumpy license, she was very happy about it. I know psychology, how to get around people. But actually, telling people, may you all be happy and well. Some people object to that, say, I don't want to be happy. Why should I be happy just because you tell me? You know, you try that to your ex-wife. May you be happy and well. She'll be miserable just to spite you. So sometimes, instead of may people be happy and well, I prefer that the door of my heart's open to all people, no matter what they are. If they're miserable, I will still love you and care for you. You don't have to be happy just for me. And that's a much nicer loving kindness, rather than always trying to put, your idea of what people should be onto others. I heard Buddhism is to let go of ego. Why is your posse, the monks and nuns, sitting on the podium? They are not teaching, so why they're up there? Religious looks like it's creating more of ego by the rituals. Okay, get down on the floor. It's not just the monks. It's not just the nuns. It's the teddy bears as well. This teddy bear's got such a big ego. He's been sitting up here all the time. At least I go down every now and again, but this guy, he's been up here ever since the retreat started, you big ego teddy. Number one, the teacher so you can see us. If we're sitting down, you wouldn't be able to see us. And it's an inspiration to see, especially the bhikkhunis, the nuns. This is brilliant. We've got nuns after all these centuries. And so that's an inspiration. That's why we have them up here. So it's like the Buddha statue is an inspiration, the nuns are inspiration, teddy bear's inspiration. So that's why we have them up here. It's nothing to do with ego. Dear Ajahn, I wish to spend time and effort in mind cultivation and understand the truth of life. I think this is the most worthwhile thing to do in life, but sometimes I have the desire to find a partner and have a family. Strangely, I feel sorry about the thought. Is a marriage an obstacle to attain enlightenment? Kindly advise. It really depends what type of marriage you have, and like most things, it depends not what you have, but what you make of it. So there are some people, at least when they get married, they have to let go of what they want to do. You're not free to just to come and go as you want. You've got a family, you've got responsibilities, and that really restricts what you can do, what you don't want to do. So there is some selflessness and giving up when you have a family. And if you're just a guy by yourself, you can just go where you want, do what you want, whenever you want to do it. But if you've got a wife, same as a wife, you've got a guy you have to look after all the time, you just can't do what you want to do, you've got to compromise. And so there is a bit of spirituality in letting go with marriages, because I always wondered, why in a marriage they always want a priest or a monk to do some blessing for them? And because it's a very spiritual event in your life. It's not just a worldly thing. A marriage is something really very, very profound. And you want religion in it somewhere, spirituality in it somewhere. So that's why I'm very happy to sort of oblige. So that marriage can sort of take you a little bit further. And you know what happens in a marriage after the years of sexuality and romance, and it becomes more like a partnership of great friends as you get a little bit older. And when you're great friends, you can support one another in the practice of the path. Like, one of you can come here while the other person's looking after the kid. And then you take turns, you support each other. And it's brilliant just the way I see some of the people, they support each other in that time of their life in the spiritual path. And, they're more like, spiritual kalyana mittas than husband and wife. And that's very beautiful to see that. So it really depends on how you do it. And if you are single, great. Because, single, you've got a lot of freedom, but also the subject to just doing it your own way whenever you want to do it. So being single is sometimes difficult as well. Which is one of the reasons why in the story when the two Thai girls came to see me, they were sisters and they had suffering. And I asked the first girl, what's your problem? And she said, my husband. She's a Thai girl married to a Western husband. He was causing her so much strife. And I gave her advice on maybe what to do. But then when I asked her younger sister, what's your problem? She said, I want a husband, but I can't find one. And I thought, the solution is so obvious. Your sisters, for goodness sake. Your elder sister's got a husband she doesn't want. You're single, you want a husband. Swap! They wouldn't do it. I can't understand people. Why can't they see the obvious solution to these things? And then, like I said to the older sister, you've got what we call marriage suffering. And if you get rid of your husband, you won't have marriage suffering anymore. You will have what your sister has, single woman suffering. And you think, as a single woman, once I find a husband, I'll be happy ever after. You're not. All you get is you get rid of single woman suffering, and then you get the marriage suffering. So a lot of times in life, we just exchange one form of suffering from another type of suffering. So, okay, you've had enough with being single, you've had enough with being married, so you decide to become a monk. And it's true, you don't have single man suffering, you don't have married man suffering, now you have monk suffering. As the monks say, we have our form of suffering as well. It's just changing one type of dukkha for another type of dukkha, another type of suffering. And much of life is like that. Sometimes, you think, once I retire, then I'll be happy. When you retire from work, you don't have any going to work suffering anymore. You have retirement suffering. It's just changing one form of suffering for another. It doesn't really solve the problem. So how you really solve the problem is, doesn't matter you're working, you're retired, you're a monk, you're married, you're single, you're gay, you're straight. We all have the different flavors of suffering. What are you doing with it? See if you can make something beautiful of it. Be content with who you've got. Whether you're single, be content being single. If you're married, be content with the person you're living with. Make it work. If you're young, be content with being young. Don't try and get old. If you're old, don't try and get young. Be content with who you are and the position in life you are. And then when you make peace with things, when you're kind and gentle with it, then a lot of the suffering vanishes. So it really doesn't matter so much, but what really matters is what you make with the situation you have in life. Who is it asks, what do you need? Mind. Who it asks is me. I asked, and now I brainwashed you, and you think it's you asking. When you do that little act of mindfulness, you ask yourself during the day, what do you want, mind? Body, what do you want? Who asked that? I asked that. Because sometimes all these little suggestions were put in my mind by Ajahn Brahm. And they come up in my mind from time to time. I said, who said that? And I remember, it was Ajahn Brahm. He put the command into my mind. He programmed me. So in your computer, where do those programs come from? They've been brainwashed into your computer mind for the last 2 days, and many of you have been coming to listen to my talks for a long time before that. Some of the things and ideas you have, some even the statements you have, where did they come from? They came from me. You've been brainwashed. And sometimes you hear the monks do things like that. They tell you to carry on, they say. Where did that come from? It came from me. I told you to carry on so many times that you say it to other people. So how much of what you think is original to you? And how much is just repeating what your teachers, parents, influential friends have programmed into you? And how much is original you? 0 is original you, because there's no one in there. Da da da. Next question. Does nimitta arise only when the body and mind disappears? It can arise earlier. The way to understand this is the nimitta is the way people experience their sixth sense, the mind. The jitter is what it's called. There are 6 senses: seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, touching, and knowing, the mind. Now, for the average Joe or Joanne, whatever you call it, these 5 senses get all of your attention and energy. So this 6th sense is just quite suppressed. But when you meditate, you're actually calming down these 5 senses. And they get so soft and so weak that now this mind, this jitta, can start to pop its head up. You can start to see this mind. The nimitta starts to appear when the 5 senses get weak, when they're suppressed, when they're not doing very much. The energy is going from the 5 senses into the mind is getting stronger and brighter, the 5 senses are getting weaker. When the 6th sense gets stronger, you can see it. When the 5 senses haven't disappeared yet. But the 5 senses have to be weaker this time. When the 5 senses really disappear, and then that nimitta can get very, very strong. And obviously that's the best time. And that's all you have, just that 6th sense and not the other senses. And the other weird thing which can happen to people, if you really get into this meditation a lot, and you really restrain the senses, the 5 senses, and give all the energy to this mind, this jitta, this nimitta gets so strong. It's almost with you all the time, and you have to, your nimitta's in front here, you've got to eat your food through this light in front of you, which is almost there constantly, because your mind is so strong, it's so powered. It's incredibly bright, and it's there even when your eyes are open. But that's only if you've got very, very strong meditation, not the ordinary person. But it does show that it can arise at any time. But it's just your mind has got very strong, the 5 senses have got very weak. The very last question. How does one know when one is ready to live the life of a recluse hermit in a forest alone? When you write a question like this, that shows you are now ready. That's not what I meant, they said. The Buddha does not recommend anybody to do so unless he sees the necessary attribute qualities. What are those qualities? Is it okay for a woman to do so? About 20 years ago, no way. But now you can. Now the doors to the deathless are open to the female gender. Woohoo! We've ordained bhikkhunis. We have Dhammasara nuns monasteries, Santi monastery, Newbury monastery, a new one opening up. They're popping up all over the place. And that's inspiring. Now the gender divide has been destroyed in Buddhism. So it's not totally been destroyed yet because there's not enough senior nuns. So the gender divide has been destroyed when there's a bhikkhuni sitting up here teaching the 9-day retreat. And also for her, you can't get in it unless you book in within the first 1 minute. Then the gender divide has been destroyed. It's getting there. So if you want to ready to live the life of a recluse hermit in the forest alone, give it a try. It's recommended. Of course, there is a difficulty that so many people want to do that. It's just hard to find spaces these days. We're really trying our best. Keep on building more huts and more accommodation. The Dhammasara nuns monastery, it should be finished in May, but it's already full up. People waiting. As soon as it's built, they're in there. So it's very popular, these monasteries over here. And in some monasteries in Sri Lanka and Thailand, there's no one staying there. So next time anyone goes over to Sri Lanka or Thailand, please bring a monastery back with you. You know, you bring bowls and books and stuff, bring a monastery so we can put it down there somewhere. But yeah, it's really popular these days, especially here. In other places of the world, not so. So, if you want to give it a try, who knows what might happen. You know, there's one last little amazing story. It's nice, amazing stories. That when I was a young monk in Thailand, there was this guy came from England. And I was there at the time. He turned up at our monastery in northeast Thailand. And I said, who are you? He said, well, look, now I was a student in psychology, I think in Regent's Park University or something, part of London University. And he just finished his degree. And a friend of a friend of a friend, you know, knew someone who was importing horses to Singapore to race. You know, they go in the aircraft, but apparently the rule was you need about 3 grooms to accompany the horse. You know, that according to law, but you only need 1 or something. The horse is not anaesthetized, but given tranquilizers on the journey. It's just in case. And so they said, do you want a free trip to Singapore? And he said, wow, that's a good idea. I'll have a free trip over there and just finish my degree and then just work my way back to England. A nice little adventure before he gets a proper job. So that's how he got to Singapore. And from Singapore, he worked his way up to Thailand, to Bangkok, and not really having any plans where he was going to go. And there he met some doctors. They were working for UNICEF. That's the one, UNICEF. And that's why, no, not UNICEF, the child, yeah, that's the charity for children, isn't it? Yeah, UNICEF. Yeah. And they said that they were working in a refugee camp for the Laotian refugees in the town of Ubon. Would you like to come up? There's nothing much there, because the northeast of Thailand is scenically just so dull. There's nothing really to go up there for tourists. So he said, okay. So he went up there with the doctor and a few nurses just for an adventure. And when he was up there, what can we do here? There's nothing to really go and see. They said, oh, but there is some Westerners in this monastery. And so they took him to the monastery. Now this guy knew nothing about Buddhism. He was only there by accident because his friends took him over there. And he came to this monastery and he liked it so much he asked, can I stay overnight? He stayed overnight, and I don't know what happened to him overnight, but in the morning he appeared in front of the abbot with his head shaved, saying, I want to be a monk. And he is now the abbot of Amawati Monastery, Ajahn Amaro. And, I was there at the time. It was really weird, that just from nothing, not knowing anything about Buddhism, just hit a monastery and straight away, before 24 hours, shaved his head, wanted to become a monk. And because I did the visas for all the monks at that time. His name was Jeremy Horner. A couple of Thais here, his nickname was Jerabi, which means axle grease. That's what Ajahn Chah called him. So he had all these names for all these different monks. Jerabi was like axle grease, because they couldn't say Jeremy. It was Jerabi. Kawasako, this Japanese monk, his name was Shibahashi. So he became Sibat Harsip, which is $4.50. His name. So they had all these nicknames for all these monks. And my name was Peter, which was a real ghost. So I had all these nicknames for people over there. But anyway, his name was Jeremy Horner, and that rang a bell because there was a famous professor of Pali, Professor I.B. Horner, Irene Horner. She was at Newnham College in Cambridge. And I remember saying, because I was doing some study of the Pali, and he said, any relation? He said, no, I never heard of her. But I had the same surname, Horner, so after 4 years his father had a heart attack, so he went to home to see his father. And I asked him, just check out when you're over there to see if I.B. Horner is any relation of yours. And he asked his father, apparently. His father screwed up his face. It was his father's sister, his auntie. And they just totally disapproved of this woman being a spinster and being a professor of this weird subject called Buddhism in Cambridge University. But that was his auntie. And he became and his auntie was professor of Pali and Buddhism at Cambridge, Professor I.B. Horner, and her nephew became a monk. And he only managed to see her once before she passed away. And he became the abbot of Amawati Monastery. And one more weird thing, it's a very strange family. He used to tell me that his grandma all had psychic powers, because she would be sitting there and said, "Oh, the phone's going to ring in a minute, and that's your Uncle George," and it always was. She could predict who was going to ring on the phone. So it was a very weird family. Grandmother had psychic powers. His auntie, was professor of Pali at Cambridge. There was not many people like that around in those days. And he just fell into being a Buddhist monk. And recently, when he retired, the word got around, he had one sister, and she recently retired from doing some job in the city somewhere. And it was only when she retired that she told him what the job was, MI5. She was a spy. And she would not tell him before because, it was classified. So there you go, it's a really weird family. Sister was spy, brother the abbot of a monastery in England, just fell into it, just not really knowing anything about Buddhism. Grandma psychic powers, auntie just a professor of Buddhism. That's really weird. So I thought I'd just mention that to you, just because nothing else to do, so. Sadhu, sadhu.
สาธุ
Sadhu, sadhu. สาธุ 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 สาธุ